Audio Jungle.
Did you know that theology is relevant to you as a person? Did you know that theology is not only for the man of God, the seminarian, or the Catholic priest? For this reason, we bring to your doorsteps this program, St. Peter's Voice. By this program, we are breaking down all aspects of theology for your consumption, for your understanding.
You don't need to have gone to any theological school or seminary. You don't need to know all the philosophical jargons and all of that. The terminologies are really not needed. All that is needed is that you be available and you watch this space. We are going to give you good content you wouldn't find anywhere.
The true work of a theologian consists in entering the Word of God so as to understand it very well, in order to have a deeper and personal relationship with God. That is what this St. Peter's Voice is coming your way to do. It is to help you to locate God in your daily lives. It is to help you to bring God to the daily decisions you make in your buying and your selling, in your personal interactions with your neighbors, in your conversation with your colleagues at school, in the work and everywhere you find yourself. Theology has a place there. God can be brought there. And that is why we are asking you to remain interactive with us. Ask us your questions. Dialogue with us on the things you don't understand. Let us discuss these things together, so that together we can journey on this path to salvation.
Like and subscribe our channel as we bring to you theology at your doorstep.
Audio Jungle.
Do you know and do you understand the position of the church on the use of contraceptives in Christian marriages?
Where does your right to act and not to act end when it comes to sexuality and birth control?
Have you heard about the natural birth control and about contraceptives? Have contraceptives come to interfere with the plan of God when it comes to sexuality in Christian marriages? The use of contraceptives in Christian marriages is a very touchy and controversial moral topic of discussion because there are different conclusions and opinions about its implications. This is why St. Peter's Voice comes your way with a discussion on the topic, the use of contraceptives in Christian marriages.
This is why we humbly invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, St. Peter's Regional Seminary, Pedu, as we stream this discussion live on 1st May 2022.
Frères et sœurs, avez-vous une idée de ce qu'est la théologie? Savez-vous que la théologie n'est pas seulement l'affaire des prêtres, des religieux et des séminaristes? C'est pour cette raison que nous organisons ce programme dénommé La Voix de Saint-Pierre. À travers ce programme, nous essayons de rendre les différents aspects de la théologie simples et compréhensibles pour votre consommation.
Il ne vous est donc pas nécessaire de fréquenter une école théologique ou un séminaire ou de maîtriser le langage philosophique. L'essentiel est que vous soyez disponible et que vous suiviez cette page. Nous vous proposons du bon contenu que vous ne trouverez nulle part ailleurs.
La tâche du théologien est de comprendre la parole de Dieu dans toutes ses profondeurs afin d'entretenir une relation intime et profonde avec Dieu. C'est ce que la Voix de Saint-Pierre vous apporte. Ce programme vous aidera à mettre Dieu au centre de votre vie et de toutes vos activités quotidiennes. Nous vous demandons donc d'entrer en dialogue avec nous, poser toutes vos questions, afin qu'ensemble, nous puissions marcher sur le chemin du salut.
Frères et sœurs, aimez notre site et souscrivez, afin qu'ensemble, nous rendions la théologie accessible à tous.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
And so, my name is Maxwell Alagji, and I'm the moderator for this evening's discussion. I will not be alone. My brother will be here with me, and I'll ask my brother James to introduce himself to us.
Thank you very much, my co-host or moderator. Like you have said rightly, I am James Kwame Dunyo, and I am going to moderate over social media, or I'm going to correlate reactions from the social media. And so we know that we have viewers joining us from all walks of life. We welcome you all and wish that you feel a part of the program. We ask that you ask your friends and colleagues to join us online. Those who have not yet liked our page, they should like our page and follow us for more updates. And so you keep your comments coming, because comments are going to help us to know what we are doing, what we have to correct in the course of the deliberations and all of that. Keep your questions coming. I'm going to stand in for you and relay the questions to Father. And like you have rightly heard already, Father is an expert in the field. And so he is going to deal well with the issues, or he's going to attempt the questions very well to the best of his ability. And so keep your comments and your questions coming. Thank you. And let's have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my brother James. And so remain interactive with us as we roll on this program. And so, Father David, I want to begin by asking you kindly to tell us about marriage. When we say marriage, what understanding are we supposed to get from it?
Marriage, first of all, is a permanent relationship that God himself created. When you read from the book of Genesis, chapter 2, reading from 1 to 25, we get that impression that when God created man, God realized that man was alone, and therefore there was a need for a companion. Then when you go back to verse 25, it says, "For this reason a man shall leave his parents and joined his wife, and the two shall become one." Now, marriage, because it's instituted by God, when man and woman, out of their free will, accept it, it becomes a project of life for them. And as a project of life, it means they realize their personhood. And it is in response to their orientation in life. That is a choice they have made for themselves. Now, when it comes to the Christian setting, it is a way of fulfilling our vocation to holiness. And a way of fulfilling that vocation for the married couple is that they are to live in response to call to follow Jesus Christ. And when they give their assent to that call, it becomes for them a state of life and an ethical reality. And when you talk about the fact that it's an ethical reality, it means that, first of all, it is a relationship that is monogamous between a man and a woman. I place emphasis on that. Marriage is between a man and a woman. Then two, they are called into that relationship so that they will complement each other. The man will complement the woman, and the woman will complement the man. Then again, they are to express a love, which usually in the context of marriage, we call it conjugal love. And that love is a way of also making it a reality, the generative power God has given to them in creation. And that love is through which that they transmit life. And in that expression of love called conjugal love, they express their intimacy. And whenever they come together to express their intimacy, it is a way of renewing their vow to each other that they are going to stay together for the rest of their life. And I must also add that marriage is also something indissoluble. That is, when they have accepted to journey together, it means till they depart from this earth, nobody is supposed to separate them. They are supposed to be together and continue this journey of life. And we have to understand that they are living that state of life in response to their basic Christian calling, call to holiness. And therefore, the objective moral norms must be their guide and respond to that.
Thank you very much. These are very deep thoughts that you are sharing with us about marriage. Father, when you say conjugal love, is it the same as sexual intercourse? Or what is it about conjugal love that is not sexual intercourse?
When we talk about conjugal love, it is the love that exists between a man and woman in the context of marriage. And it reaches apex in expressing intimacy, that is, having sexual relationship with one another. Now, conjugal love is something which is deep, which means, first of all, it is human love, which means a man and a woman, they have instinct, they have passion. It is part of that love. At the same time, it is total love. That is, when they are giving it to each other, there shouldn't be anything to block it. They should freely give to themselves, and freely they should receive it. And at the same time, it is a love which is fruitful. That is, expressing that love should give room to generation of new life, because in creation, humanity is made co-creators with God, and they're able to do that through sexual intimacies when life is transmitted.
Wow. The love that exists between married couples is really a very deep love. And I'm just getting to understand some of these things you are saying. Father, I also want you to tell me, when we say contraceptives, what exactly is it?
First of all, what is a contraceptive? Contra, against conception, something that you use that to impede conception to take place. That is when a man and woman give themselves in sexual intimacy. By the divine plan, they are supposed to give themselves so that they can transmit life. So if anything comes in to block that, then that becomes what? Contraceptive, to not allow them to conceive. And as far as the church is concerned, because the church is the custodian of divine revelation, it helps us to understand everything Christ has revealed to us. When you read from Gaudium et Spes, especially from 48, 50, and 51, we get to understand some of these things. And it says that as far as marriage is concerned, Sometimes they have to look at their economic setting, their spiritual capacity and physical capacity in regulating children. But they must not resort to any method contrary to the will of God, which means if it is not willed by God and is man invention, it is against the divine plan, and for that matter, it is not acceptable.
Okay, so anything we do to block the married act from reaching its end is called contraception. Thank you very much for this definition you have given us, Father. And so, what is the church's teaching regarding artificial family planning?
Okay, for the church, with the help of Pope Paul VI in his encyclical Humani Vitae, when you read from number 14, it helps us to understand that as far as artificial family planning is concerned, it is immoral because it is against the plan of God. That is, conjugal love must lead to transmission of life. So if man in his own way tries to block that, it means man is acting contrary to the divine plan, that mandate given to man and woman also to live in their life as married couple, and therefore it is not acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much, Father. We want to say that we see our viewers following the discussion. We appreciate you joining us. Keep sending us your comments, and at the right time, we will respond to you. And Father, one thing I have realized about the Catholic Church is that it is so much concerned about life, right from the time of conception to its natural end. And because of this, they usually speak about responsible parenthood. And so when we talk about this responsible parenthood, what exactly does it mean?
Responsible parenthood simply means that being a parent, you have to be responsible. And it includes the number of children, how you are able to take care of them. Because we need to bear in mind, as far as marriage is concerned, it is procreation and education of children. And if any person is going to give birth, the church does not determine the number of children you are supposed to have. You as a person, having conscience, knowing your capacity, you must decide as a family the number of children you are supposed to have. So to be responsible as parents, you need to study each other because you are going to express your love. So if I know my partner also knows me. Then I know when and how to approach my partner to have the number of children. I must also know about my economic capacity because it's not a matter of just transmitting life. You must be responsible for their upbringing. So you should have the resources, you should have the capacity to be able to train the children and bring up the children in a way that is appreciable as far as the teachings of the church is concerned. So you have to consider all these factors. And lastly, bear in mind about the moral norms God has given to us to follow to realize our aim as people called to holiness and determine the number of children so that you can properly handle and train them to become children of God.
Father, I'm so much interested in this definition you are giving to responsible parenthood. But here is what I want to say. The church is saying that marriage gives couple the right to perform those acts that naturally leads to procreation, that is sexual intercourse. And the church is also saying that in the course of doing this, couples must bear in mind that there is something called responsible parenthood and that they have to bring forth to the world children they can take good care of. And Father, given these things you have just said, what is so wrong? Why do we fault people who decide to resort to contraceptives in order to space out children so that they can have the number of children they can take care of and also to give birth to children at the right time when they are economically stable to give them the best quality of life?
Yes, when you look at it from a human perspective, you will see that then it is good to use any method if you want to regulate children. But as I said earlier on, marriage is a state of life and responds to the basic calling of holiness. Therefore, everything a person does in marriage must also conform to the divine teaching. This means that, yes, we have to regulate the number of children, but God in his own wisdom also put across what you call the natural rhythm. That when people discipline themselves, they study themselves very well, and they are much conscious of it. They can follow it to regulate children. So it's not a matter of God did not put something in place that when humanity follows, they can regulate that. It's a matter of sometimes we want an easy way that will not really demand discipline from our side, and therefore people resort to the way that will not make them go through a whole lot of stress, and that is why they resort to artificial. But God has put in place a natural way by which when human beings follow, they can regulate their children.
This natural thing, I'll come back to it. But before I come back to it, Father, in what way am I not responding to the call to holiness if I use contraceptives in the context of marriage?
It's simply this. When we come to using things, we need to understand that sometimes, humanly speaking, you have a genuine reason and good intention. But good intention is not enough. It must conform to the objective moral standard which God has revealed to us. And therefore, if you are using these things that will help you to achieve that, ask yourself, is that the demand of the divine will? So if it is not the demand of divine will, look for that which God has given to us and follow. And that will help you to respond to your call to holiness.
Thank you very much, Father. I want to ask, Father, are there any instances in the context of marriage where a particular kind of contraception, like condom, is morally permissible? And I'm stressing on permissiveness. Is there any instance like that?
As far as the church is concerned, anything that falls under artificial contraceptive or that will aid artificial family planning, the church is not in favor of it. And therefore, we may have human reason to use it, but that is not in conformity with what God has revealed to us.
So there is no reason to warrant any instance for using a contraceptive.
Yeah, following the teachings of the church from Gaudium et Spes and Humanity, no.
Father, we know that life begins at conception.
Yes.
And before this stage, we cannot talk of life in the spermatozoa on its own or in the egg of the woman on its own. And so if contraception only comes to block the process of fertilization, then why do we say it is wrong? Because it does not take any life away.
As I said earlier on, when we talk about conjugal love, it's a way a man complements the woman, and the woman also complements a man. So it is not one person who generates life, the two of them. And when they come together in unity, then it generates life or transmit life. So if a man uses something that will not help to give himself totally to the wife, or the wife uses something that will not enable her to give herself totally to the husband, it is blocking the divine plan of transmission of life, and therefore it is not acceptable.
Okay, we want to go to our social media and take some few comments from our viewers who are joining us in this discussion. And so, James, if you are there, kindly take us through what is happening on social media.
Okay, thank you very much. So, social media, I must say, they are very, very impressed so far with your presentation or expose, Father, and we are very grateful already. You have been giving us a lot of very interesting food for thought, which we never knew before, and so we are learning a lot tonight. Somebody actually from Ho called Akpene wants to know, if I am already engaged to my partner, can we use contraceptives? We are already engaged. Akpene wants to know.
If you are engaged with your partner, as far as conjugal love is concerned, it says it's total love, which means I give myself without reservation. So if I bring in contraceptives, it means I'm reserving myself from you. And it will not describe the conjugal love as being total. And therefore, it is not in the right direction. Moreover, in the context of conjugal love, there should be what we call unity. I give myself to you, you give yourself to me. That is a way of renewing our conjugal covenant. And therefore, nothing should come between renewal of that covenant. So if there is contraceptives, it means it is becoming an impediment as far as renewal of that conjugal covenant is concerned. And therefore, it is not acceptable.
Very interesting. Okay, Father. So Mabel from Cape Coast wants to know, does it mean outside marriage sex is a no-go area?
Sex, as far as the relation of man and woman is concerned, is also a gift God gave to us. It is through that gift that humanity participates in the generative power of God. And in the divine wisdom, sex is supposed to be expressed in the context of marriage. That is where a man and a woman can give themselves together, and through that giving of themselves, they can generate a new human person. And therefore, as far as divine revelation is concerned, sex outside the context of marriage is not ethically right.
Okay, thank you very much, Father. A lot of people are passing a lot of interesting comments. I must say that they are enjoying the program, and they are telling us to tell you, Father, already that they are very, very grateful. They are watching you from all the four corners of the country. Michael from Pedu wants to know, should married couples then have conjugal relations only when they want to have children?
Not only when they have to have children, because when we talk about conjugal love or having sex, it has other dimensions that also helps the couple themselves. Because it has a physical dimension, it has emotional dimension, it has psychological dimension. And all these dimensions help the marriage also to grow. Let me just give one example under the psychological dimension of sexuality. It's a way of healing themselves of sometimes pain. If one hurts the other, as a way of showing that indeed I've forgiven you, they express their intimacy. And by doing that, they have to let go of every pain and live together as couple. So it's not only when they want to have children that they have to engage in sexual intimacy. It's also part of their marriage bond that they renew their covenant. So anytime they want to renew that, they are permitted to do so.
Thank you so much, Father. Apart from the questions, some are saying they like the presentation, some are saying it is nice, it is very insightful, and all of that. I hope we are making a lot of impact out there. So another question is coming in from Pius. Pius wants to know, the teachings of the church are there. Yes, they are there. But the use of contraceptives appears to be on the increase day in, day out. People are using contraceptives despite church's teaching against it. What can be done to help people appreciate these rich teachings and avoid the use of contraceptives?
It is true that the church has a stand, and yet the usage of contraceptives is on the increase. But we need to understand the fact that people are not accepting certain things does not mean we should change the teachings of the church. Because the teachings are meant to help us and to guide us to attain salvation. So we need to encourage people. No, the call to holiness is not an easy task. Therefore, in the course of the journey, we'll falter. But it doesn't mean that we should change the standards because people are not able to meet the standard. We should rather encourage them and help them. And we need to understand it's a call to holiness. It is a journey with the divine. So we should also ask for divine assistance to help us when there's a human difficulty. And I believe strongly that if we cooperate with the divine, God himself will help us. But we should not employ the easy way of life. We should go through the narrow gate as Jesus would put it.
Thank you so much, Father. So I take the last question for now from social media, and then we cross over to our moderator for the rest of his questions. So Father, somebody is asking, Thomas actually wants to know that apart from the moral implications of the use of contraceptives, do they have medical implications on those who use them?
Yes, some of the artificial means of controlling birth, the health people attest to the fact that they also have health complications, especially those that are inserted in the body. If it doesn't really fit you or your body is not really as receptible to that, it will affect you medically. So it's not only a matter of just against the ethical standard, but medically it also has some negative effects.
Very much, Father. Journey with the divine. It has medical implications as well, not only moral implications. Thank you so much. I'll cross over to my brother Moderator. Thank you. Social media. Keep your questions coming, and as and when they come, I'll relay them to Father. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, viewers, for the questions you've asked us so far. Father, I want to ask you if out of the choices of any of the parties in a marriage, one of them contract HIV/AIDS, and then they still want to give themselves totally to each other, because you've already told us that marriage is indissoluble no matter what, and also conjugal love does not only give children, but it also has a lot of benefits to the couple, and so they are supposed to be engaged in these things, or they have to be engaging in some of these things. Now, if the couple has contracted HIV, one of them has contracted HIV, and they still want to engage in sexual relations, would you advise that they use contraceptive like condom in this act?
As far as marriage is concerned, we also need to understand we have to practice what you call chastity. And chastity in marriage sometimes demands that they regulate the times that they have intimacy, but at the same time, sometimes they have to abstain from sex. In the first place, if it is no fault of the other by contracting that STD, because sometimes a person may not be faithful in the marriage. In the first place, he's neglecting his responsibility, and everything that we do from our own will without responding to the will of God will also have negative implications. It is very difficult in that instance, but they need to seek for medical advice so that it can help them as how they are supposed to go about their life. But they need to understand that if they want to engage in that, and as far as conjugal love is concerned, it's a total love, at the same time, a love, I give myself to you, you give mine to me, then whenever that contraceptive comes in or condom comes in, it negates that characteristics of conjugal love.
This call to holiness is very difficult. I'm already considering myself as a 27-year-old young lady, and my husband decided to cheat on me in the marriage and contracted HIV. And then I'm listening to you telling me that I'm supposed to I'm supposed to live chastity in my marriage, even from the age of 27. I'm not a nun, I'm in marriage, and I'm supposed to observe chastity in my marriage from the age of 27 till when God decides to call me. This is too difficult for me, Father.
What we talk about chastity simply means staying pure in mind, in heart, and in action. And as far as marriage is concerned, sometimes we have what we call continence, that is total abstinence from sex. As I said, now there is development in medicine, so they need to seek for medical advice first as to how they are supposed to go about some of these things, because through technology, through science, man is making progress. So there will be a way that probably they can engage in that, and there may not be any contraction, but they need to seek for medical advice to see if that is possible. But if not, we need to understand that when they are contracting marriage in the context of liturgy, they promise that for better, for worse. What is the essence of that? The essence is when it is better, they have to embrace it. When it is worse, they must prepare to carry their cross. Because Jesus, in the call to discipleship, said, you have to deny yourself, carry your cross, and follow me. which means the call to holiness is not something easy. So in the context of marriage, if you are to live that, sometimes you go through pain. But because you want to achieve a greater value, sometimes you have to forgo a value which is less so that you can get that which is greater. So you have to endure. But first of all, seek for medical advice.
Okay, as I said, the call to holiness is difficult. That is why we always have to pray to God to give us grace to respond to this call wholeheartedly. Father, you earlier said that God, in his own wisdom, has put in nature a particular mechanism that can control or that can regulate childbirth, which we call natural family planning. Father, in my reading, I have come to understand that this method is not that effective. As a matter of fact, in the year 2001, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention expressed on this matter that natural family planning is not as effective as other methods of birth control. The failure rate they put at 24%. This means that 1 out of every 4 women who use this method will get pregnant. And so if we are talking about responsible parenthood, and we are saying that they must take their chances with natural family planning, are we not in a way saying that we should continue to give birth because the method is not as effective as other methods?
We need to understand that humanity, as far as our civilization is concerned, did not begin only at our time. There have been people before us. And when they did not have that knowledge in science and technology to develop these complicated contraceptives, how were they able to regulate their birth? See, when it comes to the natural family planning, it is something that demands discipline. And sometimes very difficult. And if you lose guard, you can easily conceive. And that is why sometimes it's very difficult. And when we talk about responsible parenthood vis-a-vis the natural family planning, it requires that you study each other very well so that you know your wife or your husband. You know the instinct, you know the passion, you know when in the mood, when not in the mood. And even when the woman will be in her fertile period and all that. Again, as far as these things are concerned, the hormones in us are also affected by sometimes what we eat and what we drink. So if you are going to really follow this, it means that you have to check all these. It's more or less like practicing an ascetic life. And sometimes it's very difficult. That is why people want the easier way. Because if you want to go by this, it means you have to be conscious of everything that we do. And I believe strongly that if God puts in nature and we follow it by paying particular attention, we can achieve. But if people made a research and there was some failure, it doesn't mean we cannot improve upon. What are the failure rates? And what are the causes of that failure? So we have to research into that, how we can improve so that we do the right thing.
Father, the other time I was reading an article, I don't know the source and I cannot authenticate it at the moment, but they are saying that society has evolved to a stage and that even the kinds of food we eat today even makes it difficult for natural family planning to work. And because of the things, everything is changing within us and becomes a lot more difficult for certain things. Earlier, those days, the kind of food people were eating was helping them to be able to adopt to natural practices. But now we have to rely on artificial methods of doing things. And so reading this article, I still want to say that it is not just the natural family plan is not just difficult, but it is very impossible for some people. And I think that we should still rely on artificial methods if we want to regulate children. So what advice can you give to me if I hold this assumption?
To you is simply this. The state that one finds himself called marriage is called to holiness. And I believe strongly that if you mean business you have to put things in place. You know that, yes, because of modification in how we do our cultural practices, it affects the food we eat. But at the same time, there are also ways and means when you adopt, we can also regulate some of these things. So the fact that food is affected, we have to look at the other side. Exercising our body, doing certain things that can keep our body in shape and our hormone in shape, they must also be considered so that we don't trivialize the call to holiness, because it is a value which is the highest, and therefore to achieve that value, we have to do all within our possible best to achieve without compromising anything. And I believe that since it is a way of life to respond to the call to holiness, based on our human effort, we also need to call on God to assist us. And when things become difficult, with His assistance, we can do that which will really help us to achieve our goal.
Thank you very much. We want to take our final question from social media, and then we will come and fold up for another day.
Thank you so much, Father. It's getting very, very interactive on social media. Somebody was asking, chastity in marriage means it's a very new concept, something people are hearing for the first time. And so it's getting very, very educative, and we thank you, Father. So somebody is asking, please. That is asking, please, what do you suggest we use in place of contraceptives?
I think I've already indicated that we have the natural rhythm which the Creator Himself and His wisdom made it part of the human person. So it's a matter of the individual studying herself or himself, or as partners, you have to do that together to know about it and see how best you can use it.
Thank you very much, Father. Paul Larry wants to know. He says first that thank you for the explanation. Now his question is that Father, I want to know if use of contraceptives by couples to give birth to responsible children is against moral standards. If so, how about couples who give birth but then they abort the babies because they are not ready to receive the unborn baby and they can't use contraceptives and all of that? What about them?
Now, marriage is also a mission God has given to humanity. And in accomplishing that mission, you have to make choices. And that choices must always conform to the moral norm that God Himself has revealed to us. And if you are in marriage, everything that you do, you have to take a decision. And the decision is not just a day. You have to discern, know the implication, the outcome, before you put that decision into act. So as couple, you want to engage in sexual relationship. That is something legitimate as far as being married people. But you need to understand when, how. That is why the virtue of prudence must guide you. The fact that you are married does not mean that you should just do anything anyhow. It is a way to live your life in response to the call to holiness. So if you are doing anything, there should be a proportionality and moderation so that you can do it to reflect your call to holiness.
Thank you, Father, so much. So another person, Raphael, wants to know that the sexual urge in man, we know, is a natural thing. Every man feels it. But then we also know in philosophy and in theology and some other courses that we have what we call the lesser evil. And so he wants to know that could we choose the lesser evil in this case of using contraceptives? If we use contraceptives, is it not better than giving birth and actually aborting the babies? So that the use of contraceptives would rather be the lesser evil. He wants to know.
When we are talking about some moral principle, when you talk about lesser evil, that is when in the context of two evils, you have no other alternative, then you choose the lesser one. But in this context, it is not a matter of just giving birth and preventing giving birth. We also have a third alternative, that is the natural family planning. So why don't you consider that and see how best you can use it so that you do the right thing?
Very interesting, Father. Father Anthony Eshen wants to know, why does artificial contraception within a chaste marriage undermine the chastity of the marriage?
I think in the initial presentation I said that conjugal love is supposed to be a total love. I give myself and the other give herself. So if you are married, it is supposed to be exchange of love. And in that exchange of love, there shouldn't be anything that becomes an impediment. You are for the man and the man is for the woman. So you give yourself totally to each other without any hindrance.
Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you so much for attempting the questions so far. I think that is all we have for now. If my brother moderator has some questions, he have to keep them coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us in this discussion. It has been a lovely evening for all of us. If you are just joining us, this is St. Peter's Voice coming from St. Peter's Regional Seminary, Pedu in Cape Coast. And then we are bringing this discussion to your doorstep for you to be able to understand the position of the Catholic Church on various issues. And today is the first time we are rolling out this program, and then we are discussing on the moral implications on the use of contraception in the context of Christian marriage. And we've taken questions from people, and I've accepted your questions as well. And so, Father, finally, what I want to say is that what I want to ask you before we take your final advice to couples and young people who are preparing themselves for marriage is that the Catholic Church says that it stands for life, pro-life. The Catholic Church is so much interested in life, the quality of life. And so, Father, what will we say if couples give birth to children they cannot take care of and leave the children there and run away? Leave them in hospitals, leave them in orphanages and run away because they cannot take care of these children. What will we say to these people? And are the sins, or is the sins of these people equal to those who use contraception in marriage, or those who use contraception are better than those who give birth and leave the children and run away?
I must say that if you are married or you are in marriage, it is a greater responsibility. And that is why every action of yours, you have to really discern before you put into action. So if you love your wife and the wife loves the husband, and the two of you, in the context of that love, you come together and there's transmission of life. It is a product of your love. So why do you run away from your love? That means there's a question as far as that love is concerned. And again, probably you did not pay particular attention when making that decision. So if you really give birth and you run away, it means that you have neglected one responsibility. It's procreation and education of children. So if you neglect educating the children or bringing them up, it is also wrong. That does not mean that because people will engage in that, then they are allowed to use contraceptives in order to achieve something good. Because we have a principle that the end does not justify the means. The fact that you want to regulate children, and for that matter, you can't maybe control your sexual urge, you have to use contraceptives so that we can achieve that. It is a good end, but the means to employ to achieve must also be good, so that all will be in conformity with the ethical standard. And that is what we are expected to do as people of God and as people in marriage responding to the call to holiness.
Thank you very much, Father David. Thank you very much, viewers, for joining us this evening for this discussion. we will come your way again. But before we fold up, Father, what advice will you briefly give to young people who are preparing themselves to enter into marriage and those who are already in marriage?
First of all, to those who are preparing to enter into marriage, from the Christian point of view, marriage as a state of life is also a project of life. It's a way we fulfill our call to holiness. So if you are entering into it, you have to take your time, discern, and know that you are ready for this state of life before. You should not allow anybody to put a pleasure on you, then you go into it. Make sure that you are convinced you are ready to accept that call because it's a vocation. And when you are ready, once it's a vocation, I believe strongly that if God calls you to accomplish something and you cooperate with God, God will also give you the grace to accomplish that mission he has entrusted to you. And those who are already into marriage, we need to understand that marriage is a state of life in living your concrete call to holiness. So whatever you do in marriage must correspond to the norms God has given to us that will guide us to attain holiness. And we need to understand that marriage is also a sacrament. God gives grace in that to the partners. So if they cooperate with the grace of God, God, though they may go through challenges, will help them to accomplish their purpose. It is not going to be easy, but with God, it's going to be possible.
Thank you so much. It is not going to be easy, but with God, it is going to be possible. If you are just joining us, this is St. Peter's Voice from St. Peter's Regional Seminary, Pedu in Cape Coast, the premium Catholic seminary in Ghana. And so I want to thank all of you for joining us. I want to finally say that if you are in any marriage, if you are preparing yourselves to marry to, as Father has already said, consider your marriage as a contest in which you respond to the call to holiness. You may have human reasons to want to use contraception in your marriage, but always ask yourself, what is the divine will for marriage? What would Jesus say about what you want to use in regulating childbirth in your marriage? If you do this, I believe you'll be responding to the call to holiness. May God continue to fill us with grace. May God continue to give all of us the strength to be able to respond to this call to holiness, even in the context of marriage. Even when we are pushed humanly to use contraception to regulate children, may God give us grace to be able to overcome this. I want to thank all viewers for joining us. We will come your way again with another topic. If you have any other topic you want us to talk about too, you can send it to us and then we will talk about it in our next session. Thank you very much for Father David for accepting to come and then be with us in this discussion. We are very grateful, and if you continue to receive feedback from people, we will call you or come to your house and tell you all these things. May God continue to bless you and prosper your ministry to the greater glory of his name and to the benefits of his holy church. And I also thank my co-host for coordinating everything that happened on social media, for taking the questions from there and then helping us to engage our brothers and sisters who joined us on Facebook. May God be with us all. This is St. Peter's Voice. Goodbye.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.